This is the Dull Man's Podcast, the podcast for dull men
and women
who get excited about dull things.
Welcome to another Dull Man's Podcast. Joining me, Dave Harries, in the studio today is...
Sarah Steele.
That's right, Sarah. It's great to have you back again.
Good to be here.
We know there was a bit of an absence. Well, you disappeared off the face of the earth, but you're back with us now.
Real life. and all
caught
that.
you.
Yeah.
We found you.
Yeah, help.
And who's that bloke next to you then?
I don't know, but he thinks he's funny.
I don't think. I assume. I'm Demitris Deech. I'm in the top 900 comedians in the world.
Gone up in the rankings.
Yeah.
What's happened?
Told a few extra jokes.
100 die.
I eliminate the competition. That's what I do.
Next week you'll be in
exactly.
the top 800.
Deech, what are you going to talk about today?
You want to know what I'm going to talk about?
Well, that's what I think I just said.
Boy Scouts
Huh?
and Scouts and Girl Scouts, the scouting movement.
Right. Oh, very interesting. I used to be a scout, so that'll be interesting. Not because
You wouldn't believe it
looking
looking at the state of these wires.
Well, you can't do reef knots in microphone cables.
I don't see why not.
What are you talking about, Sarah?
I'm going to talk about being the short person at a gig.
Oh, short person
And
gig.
what a pain in the arse it is.
Yeah. Okay.
Titch.
Thanks. Haven't heard that since school days. That was triggering.
And I'm going to talk about online language learning and particularly Duolingo, which is becoming something of an obsession for some of us. It's time for listener feedback. I know you all love this section, so let's get our headphones on so you can hear what is being said. So here is Brian, once again.
Oh, Brian.
Solihull.
Our listener.
our very keen listener, and he had this to say.
This is Brian from the West Midlands again. I am a fan, or I suppose you'd say a fellow sufferer, really, wouldn't you, for a dull podcast? So I'm a fellow sufferer of the dull podcast and listen to it regularly, and thank you for it.
Welcome.
But I have a complaint. I'm sorry. I'm going to anonymise it because I think that's more constructive. And my complaint is
He's just
that
called
somebody
himself
who
Brian.
shall be nameless said in the last episode that he was stood outside of Faye's house. Now, one isn't stood somewhere unless one has been picked up and plonked in that place. To stand in this sense is a transitive verb, which means it requires an object, the person being stood, which in this case was the person who shall not be named, who was stood outside of Faye's house. So was he, in fact, stood by somebody else, plonked in an upright position on his feet outside of Faye's house, or was he merely standing there, which I think is quite a different thing. And if this was a mistake, what are you going to do about it?
Well, although Brian anonymised the person he was complaining about, I think we all know who it was, Deech. So
I don't even remember what I said.
you said he was stood outside Faye's house.
Well, yes, I was picked up and I was placed outside Faye's house. No, well, do you know what? I will say to Brian, if I have made an error, a linguistic error, then I will hold my hands up.
Go and do your homework on intransitive verbs, please.
Yes.
What's an intransitive verb, Sarah? You're the writer. Can you explain it to us, please?
So it's, for instance, if the chair has moved, someone has moved the chair rather than the chair moved itself.
So transitive as in moving.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay. Very good. So, Deech, are you feeling suitably admonished? Or are you going to just carry on speaking the way you feel like speaking?
Look at his face. He doesn't care.
No, I'm in respect of
Grammar Hooligan.
I'm a grammar hooligan. I've destroyed the English language single-handedly. Yeah, I've done it. I remember when I was my English teacher at school, I was talking about Americanisms. So I probably was about 13. And I remember words in America which creep into our language, and I was disgusted by this at the age of 13, saying garbage instead of rubbish, that kind of thing. And my English teacher saying, so you would not park a car, because apparently that's an American phrase which we use to park a car. Apparently you stand a car.
Oh, right. Okay. So park is simply the wrong verb.
Yeah, from the other side, the other part of the world. And I know that isn't what Brian from the West Midlands is getting at. But I will hold my hands up. I am happy to be corrected in this front. So thank you, Brian. I will take you out for a cup of tea.
I thought you were going to say I will take you out.
I'll take you out.
Okay, so Dave's going to kick us off with a dull subject today. So, Dave, what do you want to talk about?
I'm talking about Duolingo, as I previously mentioned, because these online language things have become a big thing now. There's a lot of them about. Duolingo is arguably the most famous. It's the one that most people use as shorthand for online language learning. So I thought it was worth looking into a bit because I've become a little bit addicted to it. Mm-hmm. I am trying being the operative word, not necessarily succeeding. I am trying to learn French via Duolingo at the moment.
Maybe.
Exactly. And the sad thing is I don't know what you're talking about, so clearly it's not working.
I'm just grunting in French.
Gallically.
So I want to know whether, why I've become so obsessed with this, because I am obsessed with it. I do it every single day.
Well, it's because it's become incentivized and gamified. So
Yes.
you are in competition. So all these league tables, you're in the Ruby League, you're in this league. Don't be careful, or you'll go down at the the top of the leaderboard.
I don't understand those leagues, though. I mean, they seem I
think they're pointless. I mean, I'm addicted too, but I do think the leagues are pointless.
What language are you learning?
I'm doing Italian, and then because I am so competitive with myself as well, I do a bit of French as well because I speak French, so I know I can push my stance up by doing the language I already know.
That's cheating. I'm going to do English.
Exactly.
It'll be embarrassing if I go down.
Yes.
But Deech, have you ever done any online language learning?
My daughter, who is 6, is learning Greek on
Wow.
Duolingo. We do it together, and it's like a game. So I'm happy for her to be on a phone doing this, because for any listeners who don't know what Duolingo is, it's an app on your phone or a tablet, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And it's effectively like a game, but you learn at the same time. Those sneaky bastards at Duolingo are allowing us to play, and we learn something. So she does Greek, and she loves it because you get all the little graphics, don't you?
All the little creatures.
And she's like, "Oh, look, he's just like waved at us."
Junior and Eddie, and all of that.
So it works really well with children.
Yeah.
And repetition. There's loads of repetition. So it takes
Yes.
you back over and over and
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
But I've got to say, the funny thing in Greek, one of the early words they teach you is cigarette.
Cigarette.
Cigarette in Greek is tsiaro. And why you're teaching a 6-year-old how to buy a packet of cigarettes in a foreign language, I don't know.
Well, I think that tells us all we need to know about Greece. doesn't
I
it,
know,
Harry?
it does.
It'll be bottle of ouzo in the next lesson.
That's right. They wait till they're at least 7 before they teach them that.
I like their style, I have to say. But Duolingo was born in 2009, for those of you who are interested in such things. And it was a university professor from Pittsburgh in the US, Professor Louis von Ahn, who invented it, along with his Swiss-born postgrad student called Severin Hacker.
What a name.
I know, isn't that brilliant?
I'm having that
That
for
is
a book.
definitely that's a villain, isn't it? In a book.
And apparently, you were just talking about the characters, and the duo mascot is a green owl. And apparently, the Severin Hacker hates the colour green. So that was the reason they chose a green owl, which seems odd to me, but there you are. That's what it says online, so it must be true. And I was looking. There are 44 languages that you can learn on Duolingo. Currently, I mean, I guess that number may increase. And I was trying to find some really unusual ones. And there's things like Haitian Creole you can learn on Duolingo. I mean, that you wouldn't think
niche.
That's a sort of a French-based language, is it?
I don't know. I don't know anything about it.
So.
But it sounds as if it could be. You can learn Hebrew. You can learn Navajo.
Oh yeah,
could be useful.
Eskimo language.
I don't know.
Inuit.
But you can learn. Okay. You can learn Zulu, and you can learn Klingon. So they
what?
Yeah, apparently you can learn Klingon, which is obviously is a fictional language. So,
how do you say cigarette in Klingon?
Yeah,
I'll tell you what. I was on a choir tour with your sister a few years ago in Peterborough, and we were singing services at the cathedral. And we were staying in this hotel, and we arrived to book in, and there were a load of Klingons booking in. We'd actually booked the same weekend as this convention. And on the Saturday night, you know what your sister's like.
I do.
You know what I'm like. We got stuck into their disco. It was brilliant. And we were dancing with all these Klingons, and they just stayed in character all night.
Klingon disco.
I know, it was brilliant.
Did you adopt a character? Did you adopt a Klingon?
It was just clingy.
Yeah. Let's not talk about the end of the evening.
Yeah, it was great.
But Sarah, can I ask? You say they stayed in character, but perhaps they were real Klingons.
Maybe they were. I mean, I asked one of them where he came from. I was dancing with them, and he just looked at me as if it was, I'm from the planet Zog or wherever.
Well, the Klingon homeworld. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, I can't remember. But anyway, and I don't think I took it seriously enough.
Bromsgrove.
Do you think?
Yeah.
That's interesting, is it?
And they had their kids with them.
And were
as
they
well.
speaking Klingon? Had they learnt it on
Yeah,
Duolingo?
they probably were. And they had a choreographer there to do all the dances. So we were learning to do the Doctor Who line dance, which is a thing.
Right.
And then, most bizarre of all, they had the Joe 90 dance. And one of the Klingons had a kid who was probably 6 or 7, and they sat this kid on a chair in the middle of the dance floor. And then everybody had to dance in opposing concentric circles around this poor child with their hands on its head. Going down, 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 down. It was just bizarre.
Yeah, that does sound bizarre.
Yeah, that's as bizarre as it gets.
If I could,
They weren't even drunk.
if I could drag us back to Duolingo
Sorry.
for a second before we finish. Just last thing, Duolingo now is not just languages. They also teach maths and music.
Math, I think
Okay.
you'll find.
Well, math in it's maths.
If we
here.
want to annoy.
In America, it's math. That's true. So that came out in 2022, and 2023 they started doing music. So, and I know a little bit about music, so perhaps I should do the music one because that might get
You
me up
do
the
only
league,
know a little bit, don't you,
like
Dave?
you knowing about French. And but it's this daily streak thing which gets me.
Yes.
I know.
I
They've
cannot
got you.
break my streak.
Yeah.
I've got to. So I get up every morning, and first thing in the morning, I do bloody Duolingo.
And again,
Yeah.
I just need to explain to people not unfamiliar with Duolingo that the daily streak is that it encourages you to do a bite-sized chunk, maybe a few minutes every single day. That's the daily streak. This isn't Dave running around his village, start bollock naked. That isn't Dave's daily streak.
Well, actually,
Or you get emails from the inhabitants of the village saying, Dave, you haven't done your daily streak. How do we know whether to get up or not?
Is it safe yet?
That's Dave's run past my curtains with nothing on but a loincloth.
Shouting in Klingon.
you'd be surprised how few complaints I get.
Just an arrest warrant.
So the daily streak is a thing. It's and I'm sure you're the same, Sarah. I mean, you do get slight. I don't know. I can't remember what I'm on now. 500 and something days or something. But I was showing off to somebody about this who I met at a wedding, and she got her phone out. Oh, here we go. She got her phone out and she showed me her Duolingo streak, and it was something like 3,000 days. And I was thinking, that's ridiculous.
Years and years and years.
Well,
Yeah.
it's not years. It's about 9 years or something. Isn't
She's
it?
actually
Well,
Severin
years and years
Hacker,
and years.
isn't she?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's incredible.
Well remembered. That.
You know, there's I think it was World War II where I think he was a spy or a prisoner of war who escaped, and I can't remember, but he devised a way of learning languages really quickly, which I think were given to spies. And that is, when you learn a language, the first thing you do is learn the words which are similar or identical to the other language, which there are a lot in European languages.
Yeah.
And then you work that as the basis. Usually when we're taught languages, say in schools, it's all introducing yourself, how old you are, your name, what you are doing, how to buy cigarettes from the tobacconist and all that kind of thing.
Where the nearest ouzo supplier is.
Yeah.
But I think Duolingo kind of does that. So it tends to choose words which are quite easy to understand, sort of first of all.
And there's
So
pictures as well of the thing.
yes, they make it easy for you. They have repetition in there. So anyway, so that's a trick. If you're going to learn a language, start at the basis of learning the words which are the same or similar.
And if the language you're learning doesn't have any, then tough.
Well, yeah. But European languages, like banana in Greek is banana, so it's...
Yeah. But if you're learning Chinese or something, that's not going to be the case.
That doesn't help.
No.
I did hear somewhere that you
Killjoy.
only need 600 words of a language to make yourself understood to give you the sort of basics
Oh.
to get by.
Or you need to learn the word for 600. Would that
Yeah.
be the same? Should we move on?
Let's move on. Dave's
All right.
lost the plot.
Yeah. So, Sarah, you're going to talk to us now about the vicissitudes of your life as a short person.
Oh, it's really tough. And there is one area which is particularly annoying, and it's when you go to a gig or a festival and you try and get near the front because you can't see much, and then you can guarantee the tallest person in the world will just come and stand in front of you. So you can't see a thing. Not a thing.
It's almost like they followed you to the gig.
I know. I mean, if I go to the cinema or anything, I sit there, I see a tall person come in, I think, you're going to be sitting in front of me. And every time they take the seat in front.
Yeah.
And what annoys me is everybody's paid the same money, but short people can't see anything.
So you think you should pay less?
People. Well, no, I just think
Short
the
person's
tall
discount.
people should have to. I think there should be a height system. So, like when you're going on a ride at
Right.
a theme park or something.
Ooh.
So if you're under that height, you're allowed to go near the front, and then it's graduated. So the tall
Yeah.
people go at the back because they're going to see wherever they
Maybe
are.
you should invest in a periscope.
I don't want a periscope.
Would
It
they
would get taken off me anyway, wouldn't
Yeah,
it?
they wouldn't let you
Can't
bring
even
it
take
in.
a bottle of water in these days.
Well, but the modern day cinemas, the seats are
Raked.
raked. Good word. Good word, raked. So that shouldn't be a problem.
No, not so much. It's perhaps
You
theatre
do
where
choose to
they're
sit on the
not-
chair, don't you?
I do,
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm not asking for a booster seat before you
Yeah, because they
suggest
have
it.
those, don't they? Most good cinemas
Yeah,
now always
right.
offer you
Yeah,
a booster seat.
Yeah, but that doesn't help when you're standing up at something. So a festival or a gig.
You need a
where
booster
there's no
step.
seating. It's really a step ladder.
A step ladder, that's the thing, you've got to take
Yeah.
a step
You need
ladder.
you need a man that who can adorn you on his shoulders.
Adorn me or adore me
Both.
Or both at once.
at the same time.
You get on a man's shoulders, he will adore you.
I mean, you see that at Glastonbury and other televised festivals, don't you? There's a lot of shoulder sitting.
Yeah.
Yeah. You see, I would be the person behind the person with the person on their shoulders.
Yeah.
And then you've got to make like a 3-man
I know, it just gets
thing.
out of
And then
control.
you've got a human
Yeah.
pyramid.
Yeah.
It escalates, doesn't it?
then it's
Yeah.
like the Gifford Circus where you've just got
Exactly.
this huge tower of people and you're balanced on the top. Watch Dua Lipa.
And you can watch Dua Lipa for those, the 5 seconds before the whole thing collapses.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're in
It would be ironical
ambulance
if you
tow.
had to do that to watch a sort of the Moscow State Circus or something.
We like a bit of irony, don't we?
Yeah. Yes.
But even in raked seats, even in fairly stupid, if you have a really tall person and you're short, even then it can be an issue.
The amount of films I've seen with the silhouette of a head in the middle of the screen all the way through.
You thought they were just made like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't they always put a silhouette of a head in the middle of the screen?
See,
What's that all about?
I kind of have a similar problem, but it's the opposite problem,
Yeah.
which is annoying.
So you don't like to go to the front because you'll feel bad, or are you one of the
I
tall
always
people
get
who
a
doesn't
short
care?
person sitting behind me.
How
And
dare they?
and that really annoys you.
It is because they make me feel guilty.
Do they say anything? I mean, have they ever said to you, can we swap?
I have had that, and it genuinely annoyed me. So I went to the theatre, the Everyman Theatre in Cheltenham. So you pay for your seat, and I was in the first row in the lower circle, and a woman was behind me, and so she had a choice of 2 seats for her and her child, and she put the child in the seat behind me, and then had the audacity to ask me to swap seats so her child could see.
Well,
I can't work that out. It's like,
I
you should have booked to be in the front, or move your child so they can see.
Yeah, but to be fair, maybe the front seats had already gone.
well, tough.
Deech should book them all.
Yeah.
He's
But one
lying
for me and
across
one for
them.
my daughter. It's like
The
so-
lower circle's quite expensive, isn't it? I mean, I'm quite impressed that you had seats there. It's he's a man of some distinction.
Yeah.
He's in the top 1,000 stand-up cost, which means he gets lower circle seats.
Okay, and on my other side, I have Deech, who has got a very exciting topic to share with us today.
Yeah, I, as a boy, was in the Scouts. I was in the Cub Scouts and the Scouts. I was also in the Venture Scouts. And I think the Scout movement has created an abundance of dull men.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I do. I love. In fact, I'm wearing my Scout belt just here. as you can see.
Yeah.
So that
For the
fitted me when
radio
I was
listeners,
14.
Deech is just lifting his shirt up.
Yeah,
There we
yeah,
go.
yeah. I've got a little bit sick in my
No, I'm not looking.
And so it was a great thing. Dave, you admitted earlier that you were a scout.
I was a scout. Yeah, I was a scout for several years until I had to give up the scouts because I had to choose between scouts and a
Girl Guides.
county youth orchestra. No,
okay.
So I gave up the scouts. But I was in it for a long time, and I went on lots of camps.
I think it's brilliant. I think it's absolutely.
I did enjoy it. There were some people in it, if I'm honest, who were, shall we say, bossy, or
What, the scouts or the leaders? You mean?
no, the scouts, the fellow scouts. There were some bullies there, to be honest. I doubt that would be allowed.
A boy in
now.
a uniform.
Well, quite, yeah. Some of them did. The power went to their heads,
Yeah.
Was it Deech?
and I got into a fight at a scout camp.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in a tent, which was interesting. But
Tent fight.
yeah, tent fight, an in tent fight. But
Sounds intense.
So because I would have thought the scout movement would be very much about bonding and brotherhood and all that sort of thing, but obviously it didn't work for me.
Did you get the scrapping badge?
Yeah, I got a little badge on my shoulder. Yeah, successfully fought in a tent.
Out fire. Well, let's remind ourselves how the scout movement was formed. Sarah, do you know the name of the man who?
I do. No, he asked me.
Oh.
How?
Yeah, Robert Baden-Powell.
You get to answer the next one.
Yeah, but I won't know the next one.
Well,
But you didn't know that
so
one.
he was a war hero before he set up the scout movement. He was a war hero in the Boer War, so he was already quite a famous person, and he set up the scout movement from a camp which was done. Do you remember the name of the first scout camp? Where it was?
Yeah, it was the Isle of Wight, wasn't it?
It was near the Isle of Wight. It was Brownsea Island.
Oh, okay.
And he took 22 boys over there from the 1st of August 1907 to the 8th. And this was sort of the key thing, that he invited boys from all different sort of social backgrounds. So a lot of them were his friends' sons, and they were like Eton and Harrow and that. But there were also boys who weren't so privileged, and they paid by their means. So the camp fee for the richer boys was £1, which was the equivalent of £103 in 2018, whilst the not so rich boys paid the equivalent of £18.
Okay.
So they paid by their means, and that was sort of part of the thing, which was at the end of the Victorian, it was the Edwardian era there, that sort of social embarrassment and disparages was sort of quite a big thing. So that was all part of it. And during that camp, there were different themes each day. It might be sort of rope tying, patriotism was one of the things. And after that, when he got back, he wrote a book called Scouting for Boys, which became an international bestseller and is now still in I think it's the 4th top best-selling book of all times, Scouting for Boys. And the scout movement started straight from there. By 1908, there were scout groups, scout patrols they were called, set up all around the UK. By 1909, the first scout rally took place in Crystal Palace, to which 11,000 scouts showed up, including some girls.
A lot of woggles.
There's a lot of neckerchiefs, including some girls who called themselves Girl Scouts. By 1910, there were 100,000 scouts in the UK.
And when did the guides come along then? Was that later, or?
The guides started about 5 years later. It was his sister who started that up, but just through the pressure of it, they started
Sibling rivalry.
they sort of worked together. Really,
But you mentioned that there were Girl Scouts in those early days. So
they called themselves, but it was very informal then. So they were just turning up. But
So
there was segregation after that.
Right,
It's only about, I think, 30 years ago in the UK that they became mixed, the Scouts.
Right.
Whilst in the guides it is female only. As of 2020, there were a staggering 46 million registered Scouts and 9 million registered guides
that is
in
incredible.
the world.
That's a lot.
Is that including brownies and cubs?
Yeah, I would imagine so. That's a good point. But which country in the world do you think has the highest amount?
China.
good guess, actually. It's not China. You're sort of in the right area to a certain extent.
To a certain extent.
Yeah.
India.
Indonesia, where there are nearly 25 million scouts.
Right.
What?
Yeah,
You can't
that's
move
half.
for them.
You can't.
Just stepped on a scout again.
like cockroaches. But that's pretty much, in terms of the worldwide amount of scouts, that's pretty much the population of this country.
That is incredible, isn't it? I mean, Indonesia is a big area.
Yeah,
but,
sure.
And presumably has a big
But
population.
I think
But
it's
scouts per capita, that's
10%. I think it's about 10% of their children are scouts. So for some reason, being a scout in Indonesia is a very, very popular thing. Like, and I know basically here in the UK, there's a waiting list because they need more areas to do it. They need more leaders. So if you want to become a scout, there's generally a waiting list.
I mean, that's always going to be the problem, isn't it? Because you've got to because the leaders are voluntary. You've got to have your...
And it's going to be stricter from when in the days when I was a scout. You probably could have sort of one leader to sort of however many children.
And it didn't matter if that leader was a paedophile. That was fine.
Well,
as long as they didn't tell you.
Yeah, so as long as they kept it to themselves, that was all good. Yeah. But now you'd have to have your criminal check
DBS
and all that
check,
sort of DBS check. I went to a jamboree, a scout jamboree, which is the sort of international gathering of scouts. I don't know quite why they call it a jamboree particularly, but they do. And it was in Essex. It was the 8th International Essex Jamboree. I remember the title all these years later, and it was fantastic. There were scouts, all I'm pretty sure they were all boys from all parts of the world, all corners of the world. I mean, it was extraordinary. As far as I could see, it was a huge thing, and I didn't get into any fights. So I think that was a plus, for that camp, and it was amazing, and you got to meet all these people from all over the world, and we all had woggles.
As
you do.
But the Scouter movement, when it was started, and I've got not an original copy of, not a first edition of Scouting for Boys, but I've looked at copies of it, and it's actually ahead of its time. So it talks about smoking in there, and it advises boys to not smoke until they're 16.
Fair advice.
Fair advice. And so you had a Scout promise. I don't know if you remember your Scout promise and your Scout law.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I'm not going to say.
I was going to say, do you remember it?
I promised to do my best, to do my duty to God and to the Queen, to help other people, and to keep the Scout law.
Right, and presumably that's now changed to King.
The King. Well, it might. I don't know if it would, because I know about 5 years ago, the reliance on religion, not really reliance on religion, but the sort of affirmation of religion was kind of watered out of the Scouts.
Yeah, I would think it would be because obviously you want to attract Boy Scouts.
Everyone.
Absolutely.
From all backgrounds and all faiths and no faiths.
But there was a strong religious element when it first started.
Yeah.
There were prayers at the start. The Brownsea Island, they had prayers at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, as probably was society back then.
Yeah.
Everyone went to church, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly that. So, and now that's not necessarily a thing. But one of the things in the Scout law, which is slightly different to the Scout promise, was to not harm animals or kill animals unnecessarily. Bearing in mind, this is sort of 1907. We think this sort of being nice to animals is quite of a modern thing, but that was very much a fundamental part of Scouting, was to be kind to animals and to be kind to nature.
And I think it's interesting you talk about the religious aspect as well, because I remember in the Scout troop I was in, it was connected with the church. Mm-hmm. We met every week in the basement of this church, and then when there was a sort of particular Sunday, first Sunday in the month or whatever it was, there was a parade with flags on a Sunday morning, into the church with, and it was a great honour if you were chosen to have the flag, and you wore this special shoulder belt with a flag pole.
Yeah, it had like
holder.
a little leather.
It was like a
pouch.
It was like a cup holder.
Yeah, it's like an egg cup.
Except now you'd put your latte in there, but in those days you put the bottom of the flagpole in there, and you walk down the aisle. It was a great honour, and then you put the flag in a similar holder that was at the altar, and so there was a lot of. It was very tied up with certainly Church of England. Religion.
Well, the St George's Day parade in the Scouts in Cheltenham, where I was a real big thing, and I was the flag bearer one day on the parade for that, where I had my flag holder.
Oh right, and how old were you when this happened?
Probably about
37.
14.
Okay, right. So, and you didn't Did you sort of have any doubts about it, or did you think this is fantastic?
No, I loved it. I really loved it. I loved being in the Scouts. It was had such a good time.
I didn't mean doubts about the Scouts. I meant doubts about the religious connections. I mean, why would you at 14? I mean, I certainly didn't, but I look back at it now and I think, well, that seems unnecessary now.
I wasn't philosophising.
Because there were, I know in the Scout troop I was in, there were non-Christians in that group. I remember.
I think yours was probably a lot more religious than the one I was in.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe it was. Maybe because it was in the church and all that sort of thing. But I just assumed they were all like that.
Ours was mainly just about rough and tumble, tying knots and bullying the weaker kids.
Excellent.
Did you do things
Lessons for life?
Yeah, exactly.
We did things called wide games.
Yeah, wide games were brilliant.
Yeah, and they were. I don't. Do you
What
know?
is a wide game?
Well, it's basically.
Sorry, I'm just sitting in the middle here. Just think that you're both talking a different language. What is a wide game?
Well, it's an outdoor thing where it's an adventure, really.
Yes.
That you would do, and you would be set a task or a target. You'd like capturing somebody in the woods or something like that, and you tear off.
It's a bit Deliverance.
Yeah, it is a bit, and you tear off out into the darkness, and it was just the most exciting thing.
It was like pretend warfare.
For a 14-year-old boy,
Yeah.
it was dreamland, because you
So is it
Just run feral.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
So imagine that you have paintball shooting where you have like a mission to capture a flag. So it was like that, but you didn't have paintballs. You often might have like an armband and you'd rip it off someone. And if you rip the armband off their arm, then they were out the game. Or we did it with torches. So if you
I thought you were going to say torture.
that came later when we got back.
So you do it at night time with torches. So if you shone your light on someone, it was like you'd shot them and they were out the game. Well, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Dull Man's podcast. It's actually the last episode of Series 1 of this fantastic thing. We've enjoyed having you being part of us. My name's Demitris Deech, and thank you very much.
I'm Sarah Steele.
She is Sarah Steele, and I'm Dave Harries, and I'm the producer and co-presenter. And although it's the last episode of Season 1, as Deech said, we will be back very soon with a brand new season available in all the usual places, so keep listening.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Dull Man's podcast. It's the last episode of 2014. So
14.
It's actually the first episode in 2025, but
Apart from all
I've gone back in time.
apart from that, we're back on time
You've just
machines.
lost 10 years.